Grothman and Company Strategic Advisory Services webinar series, part of our roundtable series. Today, I am honored to have with me as my guest, actually a very longtime friend of mine and a woman that I respect very much for what she's done in the community and the businesses that she has built. Amy Letke is with me today, and she is the founder and chief operating officer, CEO of Integrity HR. It's a human resource consulting firm in Louisville, Kentucky. And Amy, as a woman-owned business, founded this business in 2007 and sold the company successfully and has reacquired the company now and has brought it back to its former glory and beyond. Amy is someone who understands the markets. She understands people. She understands the issues that are out there. And today, we're looking to have a very robust conversation with Amy in terms of all kinds of topics that face us in the pandemic. As an expert in HR, it's critically important that companies today understand where their liabilities are, where they're not, what kinds of things that they can offer to their employees, and actually how to manage employees in this kind of distant environment. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Amy to the series. We're going to have a conversational piece. It's not going to be our normal roundtable where we have multiple people, because Amy has more than enough to say. We don't need the others. So Amy, welcome, and thank you. And I have to remember which way to turn my head all the
time. Thanks, Matt. It's great to be with you. What a pleasure today. Thanks so much. I'm honored to be here to be with you. It's been a long time since I've seen you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the last time we got together was in Texas over a dinner. We had a mutual client, so that was fun. But it's great. Today we have a number of different topics that we're going to be approaching. Among them are diversity in the current environment, the workplace reentry and its challenges, business owners and their current fears, changing workplace, all kinds of things that we're going to touch on. And I think really, when you think about today, Amy, and you think about the biggest topic that we have facing us right now, that's right out there, it's the social unrest and it's the diversity and the current environment that we're facing. How are people handling these types of challenges as they go forward, looking at balancing the workplace with others?
Well, it's really a great question. And I think there's a lot of businesses that are really struggling right now, Matt. So, I think the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement has clearly gotten a tremendous amount of push and attention, as it should. This is one of those areas that was kind of a nice to have, to be able to have DE&I training in a business. If you weren't a company with 500 plus employees, it was pretty much a luxury. And now, with every challenge that we're seeing, some unrest in our communities, we've got protesting, and just a lot of challenges, and people are not really sure what to do. And I even received a call from a large client that I work with who has a lot of CEOs who are predominantly white male, and the woman who was the chairman of the organization was asking me, I just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They're very concerned about the demographic that on the outside, looks representative of who they are. And we had a really good discussion, and it is, we have to work really hard to create openness. We have to create opportunities. And I think as business owners, we have to offer training and education and discussions around these topics, and really find a good platform, because change needs to happen with us, and, it's interesting. I took a call not too long ago. Someone had said, well, I went to your website and you don't look very diverse. And I thought that was an interesting.
Is that about you or your company?
Well, I think it was about my company. And, diversity, it's about your gender. It's race is one component, but it can be, your sexuality, whether you're homosexual or LGBTQ. I mean, it's a whole conglomerate of things. And what I think is interesting is so many people define it a certain way. So, if we're looking for diversity in our color or our race, that's one thing, but it's diversity just represents a tremendous amount of protected classes. So, I really listened to that message and I developed a diversity statement. I got feedback from my staff, and we actually are now distributors of one of the leading DE&I programs because I felt really strongly to help that board chair of the organization I was just mentioning previously. She wanted to get a resource out to her male CEOs so that they could do something and take some positive action. So this is a really challenging topic, and I don't think there's like this magic pill that we can take to change it. Of course we can't, but we can take steps to make
Right.
things better.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said for that. When one of the quandaries is that I come from an era where you didn't ask these questions. You didn't ask. It really wasn't proper to ask what people were or what they believed. Yet they come from different backgrounds, and the tricky part today, I think, is some people are apparently and proud of their diversity, and they wear it like a badge. Others hide it still and aren't comfortable with it in certain aspects. But there's a very fine balance between trying to collect all the different colored pencils and making sure that you have, a full set and talent. And I think one of the biggest challenges is it's much like the college quotas that used to be, where they had certain check boxes, and I need my two Alaskan Indians. If that's still a proper term, which probably I can see by your face is HR improper, Randy. Okay, but I need certain categories of people to fill out the college, and they used to ask you that.
Right. Right.
And the question becomes in business: at what point do you begin filling buckets in lieu of filling talent, and can you compensate for that by offering opportunities for growth at different positions that can ultimately evolve into a more diverse entity? And that's hard.
Well, it's a really good question. And, Matt, I think that as business owners, we have to really try harder. And, like the University of Louisville here in our local community has a wonderful internship through the School of Business. They have a tremendous amount of diverse students. And just reaching out to them and working through their internship program, that is taking a great step to help someone advance in their career. And I think the thing to remember is, we're taking small steps to make big leaps here in the future, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I do think the response from the business community is, hey, I want to help. Just show me how. And I think we got to reach out to our educational institutions. We also have to look to other not-for-profit groups that can help support the business community in providing new opportunities for groups that wouldn't have otherwise had those. So there's a huge desire, but I also think there's some fear because people are afraid they're going to say or do the wrong thing and then get criticized for that, and that's a tough reality as well at this point in time.
And I think we live in a world is overly politically correct. It's overly sensitized. It doesn't mean that you be insensitive to these things, but it's overly sensitive. I mean, I come from a Wall Street background in the 1980s. These were not topics that made a difference. It was what you did on the field that mattered. And that doesn't make it right, but at the same point now, I think there's a tremendous amount of fear that runs through the workplace of not even being able to hold people accountable for certain things, for fear of retribution or being labeled something, and that can be damaging, particularly with the power of social media today, where that message can be amplified well beyond one person's voice. I've always said that you can read the reviews of the restaurants, but they'll be disproportionately negative, even if there's only 10% that don't like it, because more people that are squeaky right than those that are happy that just go away and go home and had a great meal and really don't look for the limelight. So there's always that problem. And to your point on the internship, we've used the internship at U of L quite a bit to hire our young people and train them. But I look at those people independent of who and what they are because everybody's welcome in my tent. Sometimes they will be diverse and sometimes they won't. But I'm a big believer that I want the best talent that's available without regard to color or orientation or gender or any other type of category that fits into the diverse label. And so, what happens when companies do the natural thing? They tend to, as all people do, they tend to gravitate to what's familiar and comfortable in themselves. And it's hard to break that cycle, don't you think?
Oh, clearly. I think if it were easy, this situation, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's very challenging. You think about even family businesses, you hire family members and you continue to, bring more family in, and that is fairly homogenous. And it could be, in one particular group, it could be one particular religious group, it could be anything. But at this point in time, I think we're all going to make some mistakes with this. It's not something that everybody's figured out how to do it the right way, but we're going to learn from our mistakes and we're going to probably fall down, skin our knees, and we're going to get back up and keep going. But those businesses that, make the commitment to be part of making a difference, I think are the ones that are going to have some really great opportunity to build new loyalty with a different group of people, whether, it's race, religion, sexual orientation, or any other protected class. It's just a huge opportunity and to try it, to try to do something different.
Right. I think you're right. I think the key is, for me at least, the key is, and I think for most business owners, it should be opportunity. Is the opportunity there? Does it exist? The business will be stronger for having a diverse set of opinions and a diverse set of perspectives and a diverse set of backgrounds and people that bring something else to the table that you are not aware of simply because everybody lives in their own little narrow band. But if you provide the opportunity, whether it's at the top end, such as the CEOs that your person was talking about, or you provide it at a lower end where somebody can grow to that type of position over time with proper training and proper tools and proper mentoring in an open and healthy environment that's welcoming. I think they both are there. Where I have a problem with some of this is where they immediately want board seats or executive levels or C-level positions filled. And quite honestly, you're talking about a smaller percentage of the population in these protected classes, and they have not had the same opportunity along the way, so they may not quite be ready for that position right now, and trying to force that in there in the long run could potentially do more damage than good because you could set people up for failure that will then reinforce these terrible stereotypes which hold no water.
Well, for years we've been, talking about women receiving, having the opportunity to get into board positions, and it's a very small percentage of women who serve on Fortune 500 boards. So, you've, there's one step, just we're making progress, and I think that when people recognize the value, whether it's women or any other diverse group, giving people an opportunity to step up and to help people get out of a tough situation, helping people, get out of poverty and get into great jobs and to learn how to do things differently is a huge step. But, there's, the whole women in board seats. I've heard about that for years. That's been one of those things. And, some women are doing a great job kind of breaking through that ceiling. And I think that, we just need to find ways to accelerate the opportunity for a lot of different people with different backgrounds and different experiences to be able to achieve higher opportunities.
Right. I mean, as far as women go, I think that those that don't incorporate women into their mix and don't bring them into equal standing, particularly at the board level, are fools. Clearly, women are highly qualified, and and they certainly bring better perspective and better thinking on a lot of things than men do. That I can tell you for a fact. It's a different approach, and it's more thoughtful in many ways, and it has a deeper context to it. So women, absolutely. I've never understood why the ERA hasn't passed at this point, and why we don't have more women in the boardrooms of these Fortune 500. But that too will change, and I think it will change fairly rapidly as we go forward. Uh, I think as you look at diversity, and it's really, to me, it's not just about color. It's about perspective and experience, and not experience in business, but experience in life and where they come from, and how we give a hand up and get away from the handouts is going to be a big part of that. And I think corporate responsibility requires us to use our corporate assets in order to be able to help others come through the mix to
Hmm.
have better opportunities for themselves. So I think you're right. But as you look at that, even in today's environment, and now you add the new challenge of COVID on top of it, there are serious challenges here with this pandemic. You want to bring people into the workforce, yet the question is, are we ever going to get people back into an office environment? And how do we re-enter uh, some sense of normalcy as this thing, it will wind itself out. There will be a a cure or a vaccine or some form of mitigation that allows us to operate in normal times. I can't imagine 5 years from now we're still running around with masks on our face and not being socially engaged with anybody and having takeout every day. Uh, but how do you see, when you talk to your clients, how do you see the reentry into the workforce and those challenges? What are they talking about? What are they saying? What do you see from an HR perspective that are things that really need to be addressed that we never thought of before because they weren't meaningful before?
It's interesting. It seems like we're getting a little bit more of a rhythm of similar themes. When it first came out, we were hit with, the CARES Act and all of the issues with the sick time, the emergency family leave, just, all these new things that we kind of had to deal with. And now we're starting to get into a rhythm. I think the big challenge is recognizing that everybody has a certain level of anxiety associated with what's going on. Our entire personal life, all of our recreational activities, suddenly have been just turned upside down. So you can't travel. You used to go to conferences and go fun places and tie on a couple extra days, for vacation, and nobody's having conferences anymore. And then just to think about, the whole family environment, you used to be able to have maybe a certain level of confidence. You'd send your kids to school. You knew what time they'd leave. They know what time they come back. Well, now, you just don't know
You can't get rid of these kids.
you got your parents there. Maybe you got, you're working out of your house. You're trying to work from your office. And then you've got some businesses that just, haven't stopped doing what they've been doing. But, clearly you've got this theme of, and it's so hard for us to understand is, people get sick. Some people can be right next to someone with COVID and never get it. Or maybe you get it, but you don't have any symptoms, right? And so what employers are going to struggle with for a while is that I think we're 12 to 24 months out from having some kind of vaccine so that people can feel safe. And
Not
so
by election theory.
I, I'd love to think you might be right about that, but I don't know. I don't know. It seems
Well,
like
I'll tell you what. If it comes out, I'll let you have my place in line because I certainly won't be perfect.
I'd love to think that we're really close to that, but I don't know. So we're just going to see, more stuff about people being afraid to come back to work. It's kind of going back to, psychology 101, Matt. It's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to have your physiological needs met, food, shelter, all that stuff. And then you've got to have safety before you can feel connected at your workplace. So, and safety is that thing that everybody is really freaked out about, right? Or maybe you're not at all freaked out about it. It's kind of, I think
Depends on where you are. There are certain of us that are not. There's certain of them that are not freaked out at all and don't believe. But I agree with you. I think it is very much a personal decision, and people have their own fears, and there are some that have their own fears. There are some that, quite honestly, don't have the right work ethic, and this is a great excuse to couch surf. There are some that, when the $600 or $400 comes back, will love to take the $400 for free and hang out all day in their shorts. But the real question as a business owner and as a manager is productivity. Where's the fine line between bringing people back and creating a problem by bringing them back, even though you may put everything in place that has the right measures, you do all the right things, balancing the needs of the corporation to make money, which has always been a lifelong challenge of business in a capitalistic society, balancing the needs of that company to make money and profit at the expense of the health and welfare of the employees and the workers that make the company great. And so where is that fine line now, since the one thing that is true in all of this, and I think is absolutely factual, is that nobody knows anything. Nobody has any facts. There are no facts in this thing. They're all make a fact. And they change every 5 minutes, and you can't trust the information you're being given anyway anymore. So the question becomes, how, as a business owner, do they make these hard decisions? Where is that balance again? And how do we make sure that a year or 2 years from now, when everything seems okay and it's time to go back, we haven't really created tremendous destruction behind us that can't be repaired?
That's a lot there, Matt. Yeah, you throw out the tough questions. Here's what my ask is. I really think it's a huge opportunity as a business owner to go back to your employees and say, look, here's the challenges we're facing. What ideas do you have to help us not only survive but thrive? Because I think we are in such a crazy time that employees have a great amount of wisdom and suggestions, and people commit to the things they help to create, right? So the hard thing, I think, is taking the time to ask the questions and listening and really hearing what people are having to say, because it could be the new word now is pivot, right? I'm so glad.
Pivot until you're about 6 feet deeper in the ground.
Yeah. But how can we change our businesses? I remember, pre-COVID, we were worried about having people work from home and how would that all work out? Well, guess what? It's worked out just fine, and
Has it though? Has it really?
people are probably working more. Now, I think that we have to connect more because people are working from home. But you know what? I've got a wonderful group of team members who are super engaged, and I know they're working really hard because they believe in what they're doing and they have the option to come into the office. And we've just really, worked hard to step up staying connected with people. That I think is also a big challenge.
Okay, so let's take that one step further.
Okay.
you have a fairly educated workforce in
Yes.
your company. You operate in a services world
Hmm.
with a high technology aspect to it. What does that say about the old world where I have 45, 50-year-old traditional workforce tied to the plant, property, and equipment of their employer to produce things,
Hmm.
lack of upward mobility for education, and generally going back to diversity, a lower demographic and more of the diverse demographic in that aspect, disproportionately speaking. What does that say for those people? How do we, what's happening in that area? You know, are they just going to work again, or are those companies in deep trouble for the future? What do you see?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I have one of our clients that's been with us for, gosh, I want to say all 13 years that we've been in business, and they're kind of a tool and die shop. And the guys are in there every single day, working very hard because they're engaged and they're connected and they have worked together and they want to work together. I think they have their own frustrations outside of work, but work has become a place that they can go and they can see other people. They can do other things. And I think the interesting part about that particular business, when I think about commonalities with some of our other clients that they're manufacturing or people have to come in to produce a product or a solution, the engagement level, those that have engaged employees are coming in and staying connected. The ones that are not engaged, they've got distractions, other issues, what have you. I think they're struggling because people would say, I'll take that layoff, I'll take this, I'm not coming back, I don't feel safe. And you can put some rules around that kind of stuff, but it really boils down to keeping that connectivity with people. And I can think of a number of clients. We have a client in Texas that every day, somebody comes in and has COVID. And it's crazy. I mean, and they have to shut down and clean the place and go through stuff. But you know what? They've got a majority of their workforce is very, very committed. But due to the demographic of their employees, the employees go home and they hang out with 25 family members. And then somebody's sick because they, did something. And then they come in, somebody's sick again. But now it's kind of like, okay, we know the rhythm, we know the drill. Now we know what to do. And we're going to try and take care of everybody and keep them safe and secure. So it's a really good question. I don't think there's something magical about it, Matt, but I do think as a leader, as a CEO, just working hard to keep your people committed, and I would say, it's that 80-20 rule. You spend 80% of the time on 20% of the people, right? And you're always going to probably have some C players who produce some issues, but it's all about how you get through that because you don't want to forget your A players. You've got A players. Don't forget them during this time.
Right. Well, the A players, I think, in our world, part of what we're doing with the A players is we're trying to get them to reach down into the B's and the C's so we can train the trainers and create. And a lot of this comes back to cultural underpinnings, I think. If a company has a good cultural underpinning where it's respectful, and it goes back to that diversity question of where you, as you said, the key word was not only solicit the opinions, but listen, learn how to listen. I can't tell you how many leaders I've seen that will ask for opinions, and at the end of the day, it's like, thank you for your opinion. By the way, we're going to do this. And you think to yourself, did you hear a thing that I said?
Right.
And it's so I think if the culture is set properly, you're going to get through things like this much better. Your retention will be higher. Your collaboration will be higher.
Mhm.
And in that world where you have the disadvantaged demographic where they're tied to the plant, property, and equipment, it's a much bigger challenge. And this has certainly accelerated the coming change by years. And I think the automation of the worker is coming, and they're going to there's a group that's going to fall out without the skill sets because they're too far out to get new skill sets, because even by the time they acquired them, they're obsolete. So there is going to be some displacement here. The real question that is out there, though, is the business owners. They have current fears and they have issues. What are they expressing to you as their biggest fears right now?
I think the biggest fear has been the constant change. There's just so many shifts. And I was talking with one business owner just a few weeks ago, and he said, I was just trying to brainstorm with some of my employees, and I was throwing out these ideas, and his feedback to me was, people started really freaking out about, oh, well, maybe, our sales were having the worst month we've had in years. And the employees weren't really prepared for that. So I think what's really hard for some of, our clients is just the rapid change and responding to the change. And then so much change has just been thrust upon them, whether, some of our clients are in hospitality. I mean, who saw this coming? And my heart breaks for them. It's just, that rapid change and trying to stay ahead and keep pedaling faster. You know what it's like, you're on a bicycle and you're pedaling as fast as you can going up to the top of this mountain, and you're hoping you're going to get a chance to go downhill and just coast. But I think everybody,
Another mountain right after it.
it's like I get so far and then I turn a corner and oh my gosh, I got to keep going, right? I got to keep pedaling. So
Skiing in reverse, we call it.
yeah, I mean, what are you hearing with the clients and people you're working with?
It's very much a challenge. I think that the number one issue that I'm hearing is for those that have remote workforces and are at home now, the efficiency and the accountability is way off. And I think a lot of that is coming to the surface from issues that were there well before the COVID virus. I think they had accountability issues before. There wasn't a clear mandate. Uh, they had a culture that was not, as you say, engaged and excited about what they're doing. The leaders weren't passionate about taking them on the journey, and it wasn't a shared journey. And I think that comes back to that leadership question. Not to get political, but clearly, when you look at Louisville, Kentucky, you understand clearly what a leadership gap is and what can happen from it. It's all there. And I think that the biggest fear that the business owners have right now is, are they going to get through this? There are a number of them that will not have companies a year from now. There are a number of businesses that are not coming back, from restaurants to manufacturing to all kinds of things that in some cases have suddenly become the buggy whips of 2020. They thought they were in the right business, but they're obsolete. They never really prepared for where it was going. They haven't adapted the technology fast enough. There'll be a number of owners that we're seeing that are older that don't want to stick around for the next cycle. They don't want to fight through this war to get out in 10 years and find out they're in the same place. They're ready to sell now. So there'll be more transactions. There'll be more mergers. I think that there'll be certainly a total shakeup in the way that business is conducted from a physical perspective. Who would have thought that when you did due diligence on a business, that real estate and leases and conditions would be one of the number one issues now in terms of whether or not that business has a weight around its neck that you don't want? You have 20,000 square feet downtown. Do you really need 20,000 square feet downtown? Do you even want to be downtown anymore? There's a whole bunch to that. Your office has 2 TVs in it for a conference room. Well, suddenly you realize that you have to have TVs and technology and Zoom, and your wiring is not quite right. There's an investment that's going to have to take place. The world is different, and that productivity and accountability of the employees is a very fine line, particularly when you look at an HR perspective. Where does it become that we're asking them to do the extraordinary versus the ordinary? And in your world, you're called upon to help owners balance those issues because they don't really understand. And I'll leave you with this question on that whole thought process. Where does the EAP come into this place? How many people are you seeing now in the employee assistance programs that either need help and can't get it because those programs aren't in place properly, or it's something that you're thinking about recommending because, yes, I love my children, but I'd like them to go away every once in a while. I like being home, but I'd like not to go at 8 o'clock at night and feel that I'm immersed in a never ending workplace. There's no demarcation anymore. There's no safe zone anymore. It's around me everywhere I go. On the table I'm speaking to you from are 5 piles. It's a kitchen table. I have an office inside. It's full of stuff inside. I've just moved my world here. So where do we get the help to combat through all that kind of stuff? And the personal separation and the collaboration among teammates is enormous.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring that up. And I think, having an employee assistance program is one thing, but I do see that really having a focus on wellness, whether it's, physical, mental, spiritual, one of my clients invited me yesterday to participate in a 30-minute spiritual prayer session that I actually participated in because I was thinking, wow, this is kind of interesting. I hadn't seen this. And it was all about being uplifted. And I thought, how welcome is that? And I do think that wellness is a huge issue right now. People are just freaked out with the stress that goes along with being anxious. And everybody has this level of anxiety, Matt. I know you have it too, but
Tremendously. I never do, and I do actually, because it's something that I'm not used to it. But I'm anxious about everything. People have told me I'm short. I tend to get a little snippy at times, particularly when I look at the news and I see what's going on downtown. I'm frustrated with what I see out there because I think it comes down to everybody wants to control their worlds, or most people do. And I have reached a point where I have to surrender because I can't control what's going to go on downtown tonight or tomorrow. I can't control the fact that the mayor is completely clueless. I can't control the fact that I can't go to an office or get my people there. I can't control the fact that somebody in Washington is going to do something crazy, or that a Supreme Court justice is going to pass away and all the partisan politics are going to start. I can't control the fact that depending on which news channel I listen to, there's a completely different version of reality. I'm not sure whether I'm on Mars or Earth, depending on which channel I'm talking to. There just seems to be so much that's out of our control these days. And I can't my kids can't play ball. I can't go to their ball games in a normal way. They can't go to school. They're stuck on this computer all day long, and they're exhausted at night, and yet they have tons of homework afterwards. And they're a little house crazed too. It's a tricky balance all the way around. So I think anxiety is really the right word.
so thinking about I think wellness, in the past, we always talked about wellness because of our health insurance and making sure that our employees were healthy. It helped with, managing health insurance. But now wellness, and wellness initiatives are things that are super critical to helping people stay connected and stay healthy. And I think for CEOs and executives, there has to be so much intensity that is going on and stress that if they're not taking care of themselves, then their ability to lead is going to suffer. So really focusing on wellness, it's more than the EAP. That's a staple. It is there, and people are using it. We know that. But also, this is a huge opportunity for businesses to say, let's get some wellness metrics in place. Let's look at, whether it's, our Go 365 or Vitality or whatever our wellness programs are. Can we have some fun with this? Some games, some challenges within our teams, and then making sure the executives taking care of themselves because, it all starts at the top. But a lot of times I see those executives saying, I don't have time for that. I've got too much to do to keep my staff going. Well, you got to take care of yourself too.
Right. And a lot of times I hear people saying, yeah, my liquor bills are way up over the last 6 months. Actually, walking to the liquor store is not what we consider good exercise. But on that vein, um, what I'm hearing you say is that maybe it's incumbent upon the CEOs and the executive leaders of these companies to step outside of the box and to do something out of the norm where it's not just about work, but maybe what you're saying is, okay, we have the EAPs, that's just standard, that's a backdrop for you, but it's really not proactive. It's a passive tool that's there. Maybe what you're saying is you need to create and organize some type of corporate activity, whether it's virtual or across a ball field in four different corners, but something to get people together that is healthy, that gets them engaged. Maybe it's and we haven't done it at our firm, but maybe it's a Zoom meeting where all the faces are on Zoom and you see everybody, and it's a 10-minute thing in the morning where it just scrolls through and people do nothing more than say hi, or you give a 2-minute message in the morning to let them know we're here, and you're still part of this, because I think there's an enormous disconnection that's happening with people where when you think about how much time you spend at work versus at home in many cases, and now that's been pulled away from you, you're being disconnected from something that's so foundational. I think it's tricky. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot to that, Matt. I think people are Zoom fatigued. The virtual meeting is such a great tool, but now people use it all the time. So you've got people who are strapped to their chairs, and then their calendar gets really over full. So I do think that it kind of goes back to some old. I kind of came up through the manufacturing ranks, but they used to have, in the Toyota production system, it was these, daily huddles, getting together with your team and talking about, that 15 minutes of what are we doing?
Right.
How are we doing? What's old is new. That's such a great concept. And I do think it takes a lot of work to do the huddles, but it really can help people stay connected, whether it's on the phone or maybe it's a Zoom meeting or some other way, just to say, hey, how you doing? What you got going on? What can I help you with? Anything that's pressing, and then you're off to the next thing. But it's really being intentional about that communication and making that part of your culture and this new rhythm, right, for how we're going to
I
operate.
think I think you're right, because it goes to things. Now, I have a small team. I have about 5 or 6 people, and some of the things that we've done is we've actually created a text called SAS Team, and I get these things called blink lists, and they're just 15-minute summaries of books. And when I listen to them in the morning, I'll sometimes send them to the SAS team and say, take a listen to this. I gave them all my passwords so they can get in. So there's something they can think about and do. We get together on Zoom as a team at least once, maybe twice a week, just to kind of stay connected. We talk all the time, and we have project plans that we're working through that gives them a beginning and end and an objective that we're heading for. Those things seem to hold people in a little better, and it creates a culture. And we've been tremendously productive in our little team over the past 3-4 months. We've done an amazing amount of work together, actually delivering a State of the Union presentation at the end of this week. But on a larger scale, I think those are the kinds of things that CEOs and leaders need to do in their own companies, because I think you have to go outside the ordinary, hiding in your 25th story office, waiting for the same 6 people to have access to you. And now you have to expand that and lead. Uh, and that brings me to my next question, which is not only retention, but in this environment, how do you onboard people successfully? Onboard them for a culture, onboard them for training, onboard them for collaboration and expectations. How do people do that, Amy?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head with some real challenges. There are people I talk to who say, I want to hire some people, but I'm afraid to bring them on because I can't get them adequately trained in this situation, just due to the nature of the business. I think there's other businesses that, they've got a really good process and, the onboarding is very hands on because the organization is very hands on with whatever the product or solution is that they're preparing for their customer. The challenge is this remote workforce. And it's been a challenge for a long time for some businesses that have regular remote people. But now it's just so much more prevalent because you want to have that connectivity. And, our research shows that, if you have a buddy at work and you have a great onboarding experience, you're much more likely to stay at an employer. So creating that new stickiness, so that new employees feel really connected is a lot more work. You have to really put in that effort to communicate and communicate and communicate. And it could be it has to be deliberate and it can be exhausting for the leader. So making sure that we've got clear roles and responsibilities for who does what, we're doing check-ins, making sure that that new hire has connectivity with people. It's just a much more deliberate process. And even, electronic processes can only do so much. You still have to have the human touch and that human factor for people to connect and engage in your business. So I think it's a big challenge. And the ones that can do it really well are the ones who are going to really succeed with managing these growth initiatives.
I think you're right. Well, Amy, you're not going to believe this, but we only have a couple of minutes left.
Oh,
And I
gracious.
mean, you and I could talk for easily forever. It's been a great conversation. To wrap it up, what are the top two, three, four things that you would say to companies out there that they should be looking for and where they should be looking for help as it relates to your area?
So when it comes to people, my encouragement to leaders is stay focused on keeping your employees engaged and, do things like touch base meetings, huddles, whether it's Zoom or just texting, phone calls. The phone call can go a long way now because your employees
People
will.
remember how to make phone calls these days?
I think they do. Somehow, I don't know. I always get these Zoom meetings, but it's okay. Make a phone call, reach out. Ask your employees what do they need help with, and really talk to them about, hey, well, how's it going at home? How's everything here with the job? What can we do to make things better? Get them engaged and telling you what they need. And now's the opportunity where I think we're going to just really separate ourselves with our connectivity with our people. And our people will either stay and they're going to weather this course or they're going to leave. And it's a big challenge for every one of us that have employees is to really keep as connected as we want. So that would be my big message. And then making sure that we're helping take care of their basic needs. If people are working from home, have you checked in with them? Do they have printers, equipment? I know even my staff, one of my people said, I'm going to wait for getting that whiteboard because I'll be back in the office. Well, here it is, 6 months later. I'm like, where's that whiteboard you said you're going to get? Check with them on the basics and then safety, making sure people feel safe. And if you are bringing people back into the workplace, create those provisions to make the workplace as safe, if not safer, than at home. So I know it's a big challenge, but I thank you, Matt, for having me here today.
Well, thank you, Amy. This has been terrific. I think the takeaway message is this is a great opportunity to create and foster that independent employee who can be a leader in their own rights because they have to be somewhat self-sufficient, self-directed. With your guidance and mentoring, you can grow and cultivate that. So I think this has been a great conversation. I mean, I could easily go get a glass of wine. We could hang out for a couple of hours and have more of this. But I know that we both got hard stops. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I think it's the information content is great. You've been terrific on the questions and the answers, and there really is a lot on this topic to think about. This is not an easy subject, and it's deep. And to me, my final message to those that are listening that are business owners is that it is a deep world that we're in, and you cannot just surface through this anymore. You really need to be engaged in your own business if you expect others to be engaged with you. And it's strategic and it's tactical, and what was old may not be new, although what is old may still work better than what is new. So with that, I want to thank you, and thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.